Hello everyone, my name is Benjamin, and today we're going to be doing our 10-minute or under 10-minute challenge to create a piece of music in Orb Composer. But first, I want to say a couple of things. We're going to be going over some chord progressions, and we're going to be going over them and how I'm going to be using them. And common chord progressions that I like to use all the time and that are frequently used in trailer music and cinematic music, but can also be used in EDM and pop music as well. That I'm going to try to avoid too much music theory, although there will be some theory notes that I do pass on to you. I'm going to try to feed those to you gently. For the most part, we're just going to be talking about notes and how they sound and why I'm choosing them. Or the chords and why they're being chosen. However, if you want to just jump straight into me making the song for 10 minutes, you can click the link down in the comments below. That'll take you to the timestamp where I start doing the 10-minute countdown and trying to create a song in 10 minutes. Orchestral in this case. And we're going to be using these chord progressions that I'm going to be going over. There's also a link in the description to a document that has this detailed out as well that you can follow along with, or you can print out and download for yourself as well. I have it printed out in front of me so I don't have to look at my screen too much. So I will be occasionally looking down, and that's just me looking at my cheat sheet for what's going to be happening for these chord progressions. So for the first one that we're going to be going over, we're going to be going over some emotional ones, some uplifting ones, and some very, very emotional ones. Some ones that are a little bit more tense and more intense than just your typical sadness. So there's different levels of tense and sadness, and you can get really intense and sad with certain chord styles and progressions if you use them appropriately. So as the composer, you have the choice. How sad do you want your song to sound? How emotional do you want it to sound? How uplifting do you want it to sound? Using different chord progressions, you can get that effect across to your listener, that this is something that's somber but not too somber, or is this something that's really, really, angsty or what have you. So let's start with the first one. The first chord progression that we're going to go over is A minor, F, C, G. And that is all of these are going to be in the key of C. Okay, so we're going to be doing all of these in the key of C major. So C major, that's your C major scale. And so every chord that I give to you is built around the C major scale. So if you want to transfer these to another key, you're going to have to use the Roman numerals to get there. And there's some description about that in the document and how to do that in Orb Composer because it's a little bit tricky, but we'll go over that later. So let's start off with A minor, F, C, and G. That is a 6, 4, 1, 5 chord. Okay, so the 6 is the submediant of the chord, which has the minor quality to it. Sixth scale degree, okay, and then we go to the 4th scale degree, and then we go to 1, and then 5. Okay, and that just sounds like this with strings. Etc. So that just continues, and that has a very nice somber quality to it. It's not too depressing, but it's got a nice melancholy or emotional sound to it. The next one we're going to be going over is A minor, G, F, and G. This one is quite a bit less somber because we're hitting that 5 chord twice. But starting off with that A minor, okay, so it's going to be a little bit less somber than the first one, and you can hear that in this progression as follows. This is slightly more uplifting, actually, more than somber. I'd say it rides the line between uplifting and somber pretty well. Etc. So once again, a little bit less somber than the first one because it has that strong dominant feel to it with those 5 chords, the G chords. But the feeling also has an uplifting feel too, just slightly, but not too much. The next chord that we're going to go over is definitely more somber than the first one, but only because of one small change. Instead of an F chord, we're using an F7 chord. So this is, we're going to be introducing jazz chords into our orchestral progressions, which is like, whoa, you know, I didn't know you could use jazz chords, but again, John Williams uses jazz chords all the time. Danny Elfman uses jazz chords all the time. So don't be afraid of these jazz chords, these 7 chords, these 9 chords, or 11 chords, or what have you. They're just basically stacked chords. And if you think about it like that, if you think about it as a stacked chord, here's what you have. So for the F chord, you have F, A, C, okay? And then you add that 7 right here, that E. So what you really have, if you think about it, is F major, and then A minor over that. So it has a very tense sound to it. Okay? So that's what we're going for there, is a little bit of tension and then release. So this has a little bit more tension than the other one, but it's pretty much built on the same chords, except that we've added that E on top to give it a little more tension. And it wants to resolve to that D. Okay, so here's what that sounds like. Etc. So just adding that second chord, you can hear the difference between this one, the F and the G, versus the F7 and the G. It adds a little bit more tension, a little bit more weight to that resolution at the end there. And that's what you can do with a lot of different chords, and then these chord progressions, you can do that yourself as well, and create your own chord progressions that have these jazz chords in them as well. So don't be afraid of them. Use them, try them, play with them. Tinker around at your keyboard if you have one, or play around in Orb Composer as well. So the next chord we're going to go over is D minor, A minor, C, G. A very simple chord progression, very commonly used. It starts off on the supertonic, which is the 2nd scale degree. So if we start in So we start in C major. The second scale degree is D, and then we build our minor chord from that. Okay, so we're building D minor, A minor, C major, and then G major. And that's it. Really simple chord progression, nothing complicated about it. And let's take a listen to that. So one thing to note about that feeling, immediately there's this sense of really dark tension, or melancholic tension, you might say. It really is that second, starting there in a C major scale, it's very dark, or very somber, you could say. A lot more so than starting on the sixth scale degree. So if you want to go for even more intense emotion or intense depression, if you want to, however you want to describe it, the quality of the sound is just much different. And then we go to the sixth from there. So we go D minor, A minor, and then C, G, so 1, 5. And then we go back around again to the D minor. Etc. So a little bit more somber than the other one. Actually, quite a bit, I think, more somber than the A minor chords, or the ones that start on A minor. The ones that start on the sixth scale degree. The ones that start on the second scale degree just have a much darker tone to them, a darker quality, a more somber quality, I think. This next chord progression is very similar to the last one, but it changes one chord, and that's the third chord. So we have D minor, A minor, F7 over C, and then G major, sorry. The reason I wanted to change that C major is because it's just, a little too happy there, and I wanted to make it even more somber. So I brought back that F7 chord. But I didn't want to use the F7 chord in its neutral position. I wanted to switch it up and keep that C down there in the bottom. So what we have is okay, so you could really think of that again as the F chord with an A minor chord on top of it, and then we're putting that C down in the bottom. So the tonic is in the bottom. Alright, so let's take a listen to that and see what. So just tinkering around a little bit on there on the strings. I think it has a really nice quality to it. I like it. It's very somber, very dark. And next we're going to go to something more uplifting, which we're going to go to instead of starting on any of the other chords. We're going to start right on the one, right on the tonic. We're just going to open up with that strong C major chord. Okay? So C major, and then the next chord is F major, then A minor, and then G major. So nice strong dominant, and then back to the 1. 5-1. Very common. So, and there's nothing wrong with using common chords. Don't go crazy and try to use your own chord progressions that are just out there wild, unless you're into that sort of thing and you know what you're doing. But believe me, you want to walk before you can run. So try to use these chord progressions. If you haven't had much experience with chord progressions, this is a good way to kind of get you into it and start. So let's try out this simple C major, F, A minor, G chord. Etc. Okay, so moving on to the next chord progression, it's very similar to the first one. The only changes that we make are we're swapping the the second chord and the fourth chord. So 2 and 4 are swapping places. So instead of ending on the G, and this is the only one that we do this on, by the way, instead of ending on the G, we're ending on the F, which is a little bit less strong. It's a little bit less strong than a 5-1. So typically in music theory, they call this 5-1 the perfect cadence, which is just 5, 1. Sorry. But in this case, we're doing a bit of a half cadence, or I guess you could call it deceptive cadence, although there's not really that. Well, I guess it is in there. The 6 is in there, so it's sort of deceptive. So you have, instead of that dominant sound of the strong G, instead we have this. We have F to C. A little bit weaker, but there's uses for it, and there's reasons to do that. Sometimes you don't want to have that really strong dominant, going from G to C, because it's a little bit too strong. It is. It has a very strong quality to it. So take a listen to this one with the G chord and the F chord swapped places. Still has an uplifting quality to it, but it's not too uplifting. Etc. And the last chord we're going to go over is going to be a very simple one that I threw in at the last minute, which is just D, F, A minor, and G. So D, F, A minor, G, 2, 4, 6, 5. Okay, it's very similar to other chords that we've used, except that we're putting the F at the second position and the A minor at the third position. So we're sort of swapping chords around a little bit. And it has a very similar quality to the other ones that we've heard in the D minor scale, or I'm sorry, that start on D minor. But it's a little bit different, and just take a listen to how. So here you go. kind of a strong F major. And that's all the chord progressions we're going to go over. And once again, there's a document in the description down below that you can take a look at, and it has all these chord progressions laid out for you. I'm actually looking at the cheat sheet right here, right now. And these are great starter progressions. They're all based on the major scale. So if you want to switch to another one, we're going to have to talk about that in Orb Composer. It's a little bit tricky. But for now, we're going to go ahead and get ready to start. We're not going to start just yet, but we're going to get ready to start that 10 minutes countdown to creating a track in 10 minutes to see if we can achieve that, and what can we achieve with Orb Composer in just 10 minutes. So we have the clock up now, but we haven't started yet. What I wanted to look at, though, is these chord progressions on the left-hand side. As you can see, these are all the chord progressions we went over, except that they're slightly different. So this is what I wanted to talk about with Orb Composer. So in order to use these chord progressions properly in Orb Composer, because they don't start on the tonic, the first note is always going to be whatever you have up here. It's a little bit strange, and I wish it didn't work that way, but it does. So the way it works is that, for instance, if we're in D major, for example, which we are in this case, and we want to use, I don't know, let's say anything that begins with a 2 in these chord progressions, which is like number 4. So the fourth chord progression starts with a 2. What we want to do is go to the 2 of D major. So the 2 in D major is simply E. Okay? So we're just going to be using E as our base so that we can actually get that quality here that we have. So now we see that D major chord in there. If we want to do the same thing for the first chord, we have to find the 6 of D. The 6 of D is a B, so if I type in B here, yes, now we have B minor, G major, D minor, or D major, A major. So that's how we are going to use these chord progressions. It's a little bit tricky, but if you think of it like that the first chord of these progressions, and this is true for any progression, if it's not the tonic of the chord, if it's not the 1 of the chord, like a C major chord, if it's not C major and you're in the C major scale, it's going to translate those chords automatically to the default key. So just keep that in mind when making your own chord progressions as well, that you want to make sure that it's the same. So this is for D, so I'm going to use progression 4, and then that's going to be E minor, B minor, D major, A major. Now, let's go ahead and get started on this. So I already know a couple of things that before I even start the timer is that I want this to be in 6/8 time, and I want to be in D major. I'm also going to set the tempo before we begin. I want the tempo to be around 90 beats per minute, so a little bit slow but not too slow. And that's where we're going to stop any thing that I'm going to do before we begin this track. But I already know that those are my settings that I'm going to go with. And so let's begin the timer. We're going to go ahead and start the timer and see what we can do in 10 minutes. And once the 10 minutes is up, we're going to play what we have and see where we're at. So it started counting down. We have already wasted 10 seconds just talking. So let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to bring in a melodic intro, and then we're going to go ahead and start with a theme. And then we're going to go to a variation on that theme, and then we're going to copy this theme block just like this, and then we're going to do I want to do question answer question for both of these. So question answer question, And for this one, I want to do the same thing as well. Now it's automatically given me some chord progressions that we could take a listen to and see what we have, but I doubt I'm going to be very satisfied with them. Yeah, not really satisfied with any of that. So what we're going to do then is let's first hide these curves so that they're not in my way, so I can see a little bit clearer on everything that's going on. I also want to do one quick end here, so we'll just end it right there. So we're in 6/8 time, and I want to use our chord progressions. That's why I showed them to you, is because I wanted to use them. So we're going to use progression number 4. And we're going to use that for the entire first block here. So you have to drag it into both of these positions, okay? And then for the second chord progression, I'm actually going to change it to progression number 5, which is this one here. So it's actually going to change to that F7. And then for the last chord progression, we're going to go to something else. Now, the wonderful thing about these chord progressions is that, okay, D, E, F, G, A, B, right? Okay. The wonderful thing about these chord progressions is that you can actually mix and match them pretty well. And the reason you can do that is because, for the most part, they all end with a dominant chord. They all end with an A minor. And so the A major, or the 5. They all end with the 5. And the 5 can go pretty much anywhere. So there's really no limit to what you can do when you have that, that quality of sound. So where's our B minor chord there? We'll just end it there on B minor. And so let's see what we have now. And we're going to go ahead and I want to regenerate notes, all blocks, instruments and notes for all blocks. I don't want to recreate chords. So let's see what we come up with now. We're definitely not going to be doing colenos in the bass. For sure, that's not happening. We're missing something. There's something here that's not really helping us a whole lot, and that's going to, I think... So I think what really needs to happen is our bassoons need to be a little bit more motion. I'm going to take out the bass clarinets for this, but let's just put in some more motion in the bassoons. So we're going to change the bassoons from legato to staccato, and we're going to give it a average rhythm will be fine, I think. And then we'll just do like a little bit of a swell from mezzo forte to forte, and then mezzo again. And then we'll do the accompaniment roll so that it can do what we want it to do, which is sort of that. And it's only doing one chord note, so let's do 3. Let's try 3. That's nice. Let's duplicate that in the violas. Pizzicato's okay. Now, I'm not really sure what the tuba's doing here. It's quiet for some reason, and it's really low. Let's take a listen to that. Yeah, it's way down there in the low register. Let's move it around. This is one of those bugs that I've talked about before with Orb Composer. So let's go to our tuba. And let's see here. Tuba. Sustain? Yeah, sustains. Let's listen to that. So yeah, we're playing a polyphony there, which is just weird to do on the tuba. You don't want to do that. So let's change that to a bass roll. We have about 4 minutes left, and we're not making much progress. So we need to kind of move it along a little bit here. So let's bring in those horns, doing a nice legato and roll. We're going to give it the melody. and see where we end up with. Let's take the violins out, violin 1's out. Let's switch this over to spiccato as well, and we'll go ahead and give it an average momentum. And another swell like this, mezzo swell, and not the melody. So you're not going to be playing the melody, playing the accompaniment roll. Unsilence everything. There we go. So our melody could be a little bit more complex because this is a slow rhythm. So we're going to add some more complexity and momentum to our horn line there. Let's get rid of the let's get rid of that. Now let's just change this to a G7. Yeah, sure. Let's do some long basses here. So we have about 2 minutes left. I did not practice this before, by the way. This is just me off the cuff doing this and just seeing where we land. I don't know why that G7 doesn't sound like the way I want it to. I think it's doing a G flat 7, not a major 7. It should be a major 7 chord, and I think I may have made a mistake in saying G7, so G major 7 is what it should be. So that's my fault. I automatically assume G major 7 when I say it, but it's not what it is. So let's move our horn, or yeah, let's move it there, and then you're not going to be playing the bass roll, you're going to be playing the background roll. We got about a minute left to see where we landed here. Actually, I want to move this. Let's move it to the violins. Oh, we got some weird sounds happening there. So we have 22 seconds left, and we're pretty much done. So there's really not a whole lot I can do in 16 seconds. So we're going to go ahead and stop the timer. So let's see where we landed in that amount of time. So here's what we have. We have a chord progression that uses the chords that we went over, the chord progressions that we discussed. Starts off quite light, a little bit of pizzicato. Gets big pretty fast there. So that's where we hit it. That's where we landed in our 10-minute our 10-minute challenge. Now, I probably wasted a good bit of time there talking a little bit too much. I bet if I had done this without the camera and the lights and everything, that I might have gotten a little bit further. But this is a track. This is a track that you could, get something out of. You could get something out of this for sure. I mean, I know it's not there. It's not there yet, but it's close, and there's ideas there that are really good that we can use. And part of that is due in part to our chord progressions, our pre-made chord progressions that we're using. And the reason I labeled them progression 1, progression 2, progression 3 is because that's the order that they're in on the cheat sheet, so that way I know which one is which, and I know which chord it needs to start on. So if I add more, I can add more to the list as well. And if you want to add your own chord progressions, let us know in the comments what kind of progressions maybe you've used. What kind of 4-chord progressions, 8-chord progressions. Let us know what kind of progressions you've used. Maybe 4-chord progressions or 8-chord progressions. Whatever it is that you like to use, let us know in the comments. I'd like to see some chord progressions that you've used. But I hope you enjoyed this video. This was challenging to try to put together a track in under 10 minutes. Even Orb Composer, with as strong as it is, it's hard because there's really a lot of tinkering that you have to do to get things exactly the way you want, and I still don't think it's there yet, and it could get there. It could get there with a bit more work, and I might release this track as a finished track in the next video. And I might release this track as a finished track to see what came out finally after this video comes out. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you got something out of this video and learned something. I tried to not be too in-depth with the music theory. If I was, let me know in the comments if I was a little bit too music theory on you, but hopefully you learned something from these chord progressions that I've shown you and how to utilize them effectively in your compositions. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Hopefully you found this tutorial helpful. If you did, give us a like. And if you want to get your copy of Orb Composer, click the Buy Now button on the screen. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave them down below, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any future videos. And you can also join our Discord community by clicking the link in the description. Thanks for watching.